At some point as well, I realized, man, the overarching voice, which is greater than hip hop or rap music or any of that, is God himself.
Hey.
So now how do these two things work together? But I could never let go of God in my pursuit of culture. God will mature men, but that maturing comes with the confrontation of risk, the embrace of risk. There's no magical feeling where you flip a switch and now I'm ready to get married. Or I got it out my system because I wanted control. I wanted to be married by the time I'm 25. I wanted to have my music do a certain thing. I wanted to, figure out this type of career, do this, that, the other, and an obsession with things not going according to what I had planned in my head. It literally becomes that, an obsession. It was good too. I was like, oh, I'm not sad. I got home that night after and just broke down, and Ayana was like, oh, why are you sad? And I was like, you know what the saddest part is? That was the last Thanksgiving I was gonna have with her the year before. I don't do well with like, oh, that's the last. That's tough, brother. After Sunday service, your situation might not get better, it might get worse, but God's still good. Now, how do you deal with that tension?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Beautiful Breakdown. It's your boy Rodney, and I am joined by, I don't know what to say, lovely, or I'm joined by my brother from another mother. Man, this dude right here is something special. Let me run him. Let me run it down with this. Who this brother is? He is a DeMatha High graduate. Ran track for DeMatha. Played football for DeMatha High. Went to Carnegie Mellon. By the way, that school was a little nerdy. I ain't even gonna hold you. I was expecting something different when I went to visit, but Carnegie Mellon, prestigious university. Then my boy went to Johns Hopkins University, graduated with an MBA. Come on, my brother. He's a creative, a pastor, a husband, and soon to be, already, brother, a father. Come on, somebody. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome to you somebody that I am proud to call a friend, somebody I'm proud, absolutely proud to call a brother. My guy, Sheun Ogunsunlade. Welcome, my brother.
Hey, this intro voice you got.
Hey, you like that though, don't you? That's me. That's me. You know that. Am I faking?
A little bit.
No, I'm not.
You don't think he is a little bit? Jawline, a little bit.
Hey, man. First of all, how you doing?
I mean, that's the thing. People ask that. It's like, I'm
really asking you how you doing, my brother. Don't give me the, I'm good.
That's what you say, yeah, straight. Yeah, nobody really asks that and then pauses to let you answer. So, I mean, since we're here. But no, I'm doing good overall. I think it's just every season in life comes with a multiplicity of things, amen. So when you say how somebody's doing, it's like, well, what part are we talking about? What are we doing on? But
all right, let me hit you with this. In one word, describe where you are today. That's a good one.
It's two words, but in process.
Why you gotta be rebellious, bro? I said one.
In is a small conjunction, I would say, right? So the in process. So it does feel like, this season is defined as being in between a few things for sure. But like you talked about in the intro, definitely with the baby literally on the way, you feel it's like in process of one of the biggest transitions of life. So I feel like I'm in this anticipation stage, but also transition stage. And I feel like every phase in life is just, what the heck? We trying to figure out what life is. Yeah, I literally roll out of bed like, man, what is life? Which is like that's a pothead question.
But, ain't a pothead, brother. Like, that's a real question. Like,
it's
what
weird
are
when
we
you
doing?
think about it. It's just like, man, life. We just here. You wake up. I'm 37. It's like time is really going very quickly, and if I don't grab a hold of it, it just kind of passes by. So it is that time of like, all right, man, slow down, figure out what's going on, grasp these moments, especially with big things like the baby coming up, or even, when I got married, or certain things like that, where it's like, no, actually slow down, wrestle with those questions of like, what is life? because if you don't grab a hold of it, it's like, man, that whole season is just gone.
And never to be returned.
Yeah. But all that deep stuff too. But yeah, no, things are, I think I have a perfect blend of excitement, anticipation, sadness, deep introspection. All of it's in process together. And I'm somewhere in the middle of all of that. Yeah.
Oh man, I think that's a beautiful tension, you know, and especially for men in particular to be able to sit with that tension and process it. You know, like we can be happy, we can be joyful, we can be sad, like we could be all these things in one. And, you know, and it's a beautiful thing, especially when we can be comfortable just sitting with that, you dig? And we're going to talk about therapy because you went to therapy and all this stuff. You actually got me into therapy. But I want to ask you this question. Y'all heard me address my brother by his native name. But I'm really interested. I really am interested in your thoughts, your opinion. Your parents are first generation Nigerians, or you would be first generation.
I'm first gen.
So you are first generation Nigerians. Your parents immigrated from Nigeria, came here. Your dad, I remember one time he sat down, gave me the whole spiel about all he had to work through. And I was like, yo, wow. I mean, my boy was like grinding over here. Talk to me about what it was like to be, or what it is like to be a Nigerian, but living in an American world. Like, what is that like?
Yeah, no, I feel like that is again, it's like me in the middle of multiple things. So certainly at the house, it's like, you know, very Nigerian in culture, but growing up here as well, I think our PG County DMV culture is rich as well. So it's like, man, which world do I want to fit in when I'm in the house? No choice but to fit here. But when I'm outside the house, it almost felt like, especially growing up, suppress that. Don't be normal. Just want to be regular black, y'all. I just fit in. So
he said regular black.
Even as you mentioned, like my name, that in and of itself rises so much tension. Just my real first name, Sheun, means thanks be to God. But I realized people can't say that. So I didn't want to be that kid when they call and roll and they just pause. What's that boy saying? And I'm like, whatever. So whatever you call me, I'll go with it. So I have Sean, Sheun, everything in between that. And just coming to grips with loving my culture for myself. I think that's been a journey even up until this point right now. So I'm grateful for my parents that they stuck to how they were raised, and they brought that over here to this country to ensure what they instilled in us, which I think is extremely, at its core, Nigerian discipline, hard work, sacrifice, commitment to family, and God. These are things that they've instilled in me that I've watched them model, which I can't do anything but be grateful for. But looking back as a young person, all I was I was very self-conscious. I just ain't want to get Joan on. I'm not trying to get sparked.
Listen, so, our PG County boy, you could get sparked real quick.
So it was that, trying not to get Joan on, but then also I think I have two older brothers, so one of my biggest life's missions growing up was just don't embarrass your brothers.
You talk about that, and
I
don't know what that. I don't know what that weight feels like, but I've heard you mention that several times about not wanting to disappoint your brothers. Like, why
I just
was
didn't
that
want
such
to
a deep
embarrass
thing?
them, because it was like being younger. It's just like, just shut up. That's all. So I feel like I grew into myself definitely. Because they're 4 and 5 years older than me, I was at school, the same schools they went to, but right after them. So it wasn't like I'm walking the hall with them. But I know at church, I'm their younger brother. Anywhere else growing up, I'm their younger brother. So it's like finding your own voice and identity was a journey I took largely internally by myself, I would say, where I was just like, all right, what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to be. That's rooted in, as much as I accept our culture, do we wear, traditional Yoruba clothes and people joan on you? I'm like, nah, I ain't trying. Have your parents pull up or people come over the house and they smell certain foods and all that stuff. It's like things that we are self-conscious over. But what I realize is that's the core of identity, and that's why I'm grateful my parents passed that down. And I think the journey of like not embarrassing my brothers, finding my own voice, all of that is how identity is formed. It's from dealing with the hardships of like, oh dang, that hurt, or these people can hurt me over here, or oh, I'm not finding acceptance here, or oh, things aren't working out like I thought they would. All of that shapes you into kind of who you will be. And in the tension of all of that, of course, God can intervene in people's stories. And I think that's pretty much a lot of what happened to me, which I'm sure we'll unpack in many ways. But yeah.
So I hear like you saying like, which is interesting to me. I don't know if I've thought about it that way, but it's like identity is pretty much solidified within you out of like testing or adversity. You know what I mean? It's like I hear you saying, because I had to deal with these things, I had to manage these emotions, these different paths that I wanted to take, or whoever else's perspective of me, expectations of me, you in that tension discovered like, no, this is who I am. Would that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like you can take everything back to Marvel Comics or X-Men. Right? Everybody has a hero's journey or a character arc of how you're formed. You'll see a lot of these villains are like, well, this happened to me and it never happened again. Or people, develop their powers or whatever. And I think that's just a metaphor for it. But a lot of times we are products of our environment in many ways. And that environment comes with the hardship, the hurt, and the struggle. And it is how you begin to navigate and unpack those things as you mature as an adult. And that is the formation of your identity. You know what I'm saying? It is the wrestle with pain, the wrestle with other people's ideas. And I think for me, that was the biggest one too. I realized like, oh, I am a very much a people pleaser. It's like, oh, you want me to do what? All right, bet, I'm gonna do that. I just want everybody taken care of and good. But what that leaves you with is you never ask yourself, well, what do you want to do?
So when did you start asking that? Like I identify with being a people pleaser or just wanting everybody to be good.
Yeah.
And you're the youngest, I'm the youngest. I don't know if that has something to do with being the youngest. My wife is a middle child, I don't know. We all got our own issues. But when did you discover that for yourself? Like I have to lean into me versus just trying to make sure everybody else is good?
I think I'm still discovering that, bro. I feel like not until after, I think I went to grad school. Well, when you talking about all the degrees and blah, blah, I was like, these are default settings in the Nigerian home. You better get some degrees. You just better do it. I feel like my degrees are a result of just pleasing my parents.
Yeah.
I didn't think about what I want to do.
Brother,
they said, you good at math?
Yeah.
Go be an engineer.
You're living
like,
indoors
sure.
and eating good.
Oh, for sure. I think there's something to it. But I would say not until definitely after grad school, the tension of graduating with a degree and realizing I don't want to work in this. Yeah. Then unpacked a whole lot of come to Jesus moments with my parents,
I remember some. I remember your dad calling me up.
Oh, listen, he was not playing. So
yeah.
But that was largely me trying to find my voice and say, man, I feel called to do this. And I know you have a different vision for my future, but this is what I feel.
And that's tough, bro, because it's like it's pretty much like there's nobody you really want to please more than your parents.
Oh, yeah.
But there is this, and I know I'm going to have to go through that at some point with my children. There's going to be a crossroads where I want this for you.
Yeah.
But just because I want it for you doesn't mean like it's God's will or it has to be for you. I want to transition this into, it's interesting you talk about being a Nigerian, but also living in this American culture. One thing I know about you is your passion for the church, like your passion for the kingdom of God. And I make the correlation between like, it's similar to us being a Christian, us being children of God. Like our culture, which is heavenly, is different. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's a little too different and we might want to dumb it down, or this is where Jesus said, don't put your light under a bushel. And, but yet we have to function in this world. We're in this world, but not of this world. Talk to me about like, when did you really discover or encounter Jesus tangibly, like for the first time? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, a byproduct of my parents' rearing for sure is they dropped me in a lot of Christian environments. So I went to Lanham Christian School for kindergarten, and across from Lanham Christian School, there was Cougar Day Camp, which was a Christian summer camp as well. So I remember after kindergarten, I went to camp that summer, and yeah, I had to be 5 or 6. And I just remember we would have Bible class, and we called all, this might sound a little cultish, forgive me. But, we called all our camp.
It'd be some cultish stuff
it was
going
not
on.
a cult. It's cultish feeling, but those people were all very, I came out unscathed. It was they were cool people, man. But we called all our camp counselors aunt and uncle. So
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
yeah, okay, so one of the aunts or uncles was teaching us Bible class, and I just remember they gave, we're just sitting in a little room, so no real altar there, but they gave what would have been an altar call, and something in what they talked about, all I remembered was, I think God is 100% real, and if he's real, I better respect him, and he has some say-so in what I'm gonna do. So whatever they were talking about, I said, bro, all right, I gotta come up here. God was showing me, yo, I'm real. And I think to me, looking back, I don't think I knew it at that moment, but looking back, when the Bible talks about the fear of the Lord being the beginning of knowledge, and wisdom is connected to that, God was unpacking to me wisdom at 5 or 6 by making me aware and conscious of what it means to fear him. And that came from a gospel presentation from an aunt or uncle at a camp when I was 5 or 6. And I think from there, God began to add that wisdom and clarity over, going to Sunday school, being at that camp for multiple summers. I was literally in an elementary school where they taught Bible class, and we had that too. So God began to add more head knowledge to the spiritual awakening he gave me just of him being real. And I think it was really over time where that began to unpack the reality of like, man, this God is real, and I better be concerned or interested in what he's concerned or interested about. You know what I'm saying?
No, so it's, man, I tell people this all the time. You were one of the first like real Christians. Like Sheun really saved y'all. Like he's really saved, and I remember coming out of what I was coming from, running around in the streets, acting crazy, and then coming into a relationship with you. And I was like, yo, this dude really loves Jesus. He's really walking this thing out. You encounter Jesus. Jesus reveals himself to you as God. Like you have this reverence, you have this desire for worship. When did you transition into loving, like, the church, loving his people, loving his bride?
Yeah. And I think there is a whole conversation we can have. Somebody needs to do a statistical analysis on church kids and how many of them grow up and still go to church.
Brother.
It's not a good statistic, because I think people forget the church is still made up of people. And many people get hurt by other people and then discard the church and God completely. And there's just a bad retention rate of people who were born into church settings, staying in church settings as they grow up. So I know for me, our youth ministry was the time, well, even before that, I would say our children's church group, where they begin to allow us to take offices, or like, oh, you can be the treasurer, blah, blah, whatever. It began to make me realize, like, not only do I fear this God, but he's put me in a group of loving people where my best and core friends were all connected either to church or to my Christian school. So it's like, oh no, these are my people. And I would say going into high school and in the youth group, when we begin to have some younger people and just all of our people, I begin to feel almost tangibly at times where it's like, oh no, these people matter to me. You know what I'm saying? I want my brother and sister or the younger person, I want them to be good. And what does that look like? I don't know, but let's figure this out. But I just felt like God began to knit into me and many others of us at that time to say, like, no, we have a community which is connected to yo, these are just my people, and God was bringing more and more people to be connected to us. And that was a God thing, and it literally started to happen elementary school, but it really ramped up in high school, where it was like, no, this is our group now, you know what I'm saying? So just even looking back at that, that's a God thing, where you begin to say, I don't know these people from anywhere, but once you come into this group, it's like, these are my people.
You said something powerful, and you and I, man, for y'all who don't know, it's almost 20 years we've been serving Jesus together. I started serving in youth ministry alongside this brother, and we've seen a lot of people come and go.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen a lot of people come and go. We've seen a lot of people, kind of like as Jesus paints that picture in the parable, man, they spring up with joy, but there's no root, you know, and the sun scorches them, and then they just fade away. And it's like, what happened? I remember being at a youth camp.
Well, we had a lot of those.
Yeah, we were, but this was probably the second year I went that radically changed my life. But I remember there was a time of ministry taking place, like the Spirit of God was moving. I mean, people were just being touched, everybody from the adults to the youth. And I just remember for a moment looking at you, and you were facing away from me, and I could just see your back. And
he loved talking about somebody crying.
My boy's shoulders was getting jiggy with it. So I was like, oh, look at the Holy Ghost. But I really want to ask you, I felt like something changed in you when that happened. And I noticed the reason why you were crying was because that was like the night where it was like the youth night. It was the youth group night, and everybody was kind of praying for each other, ministering to each other, and you just kind of stepped off to the side and you had that moment with the Lord. Like, what was happening in that moment?
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, tying back to earlier, one thing, at least for me, I'm not gonna speak for all Nigerians, I don't do emotion well.
Right, you really don't.
My wife would echo that probably. So I'm learning emotion still to this day. But I think that night, and I would say, yeah, it was like certainly the moment, but it was a gradual thing too. But I'm noticing it in my life now too. I am more moved to emotion by putting myself in other people's shoes, or just seeing other people and feeling kind of what they're feeling even for a moment. So for me, the biggest part about that night was just like, oh man, our group gets it, and they're coming together. And there's this sense of love, which is directly reflective of God, who is love. And I feel like for a minute, he gave us a glimpse of like, oh, this is what the family of God looks like.
Yeah, how that love emanates.
It's like a supernatural bond where it's like, man, these people from all over the place are gelled so much so where it's like the family of God. And the Bible talks about how our unity would be the thing that draws other people in, and they'll see our unity and they'll be like, dang, I want to be a part of that. And I think just for an instant, I saw such a unity that it was just beautiful, man. And that was just a reaction to it being like, dang, look at our people. Now,
How did that change you?
I don't know, bro, because the cool story is like, yeah, change in my life was different ever after. That wasn't the case, because those camps were beautiful, but we also see the cycle where those camps are the roller coaster up,
Yeah.
and then things come down after.
Especially, I think, as teenagers, man, like,
That's the life.
yeah, it's high highs and low lows.
Yeah. So it changed me to say like, oh, this matters to me. I want to dedicate my time, energy, life, money, whatever I can to try and cultivate that for more people. So I think that was the change, to say, oh, look at this, the family of God, people being connected to the family of God can truly transform their lives. Because I think sometimes you grow up in church and you just become numb to it. We just do church, it's just whatever. But for an instant, we saw like, oh no, doing this church thing works. But it didn't change so radically, because when I look back at who was there, I'm like, I don't know where they at. There's still a number of my friends, but it's like,
we're a family. I mean, we share a lot of the same relationships, and it's just like, you know, they're gonna be family for life, you know, type of situation. But your heart breaks because you know the value and the beauty in Jesus.
Yeah.
And being obedient to him because you know he loves you. So he's not telling you something to destroy you or shame you. He's telling you something because he wants the highest and best for you. But I in talking about this, what would you say? I didn't grow up in church, right?
That's my wife's favorite quote.
I
hate when people say
we
that.
were the Christmas
I didn't grow up in church.
and Easter family, bro.
I didn't
like,
grow up in church.
Now, when I was with Fannie Mae Burroughs in Pennsylvania, oh yeah, we was in church. We was in church every Sunday, week to week. But when I was home chilling with my mom, nah, we weren't in church. So I want to ask you, in all seriousness, because there is I think it's an epidemic, of people just kind of, especially church kids or people who grew up in church. Man, what would you say to the church kid who grew up in church and who is either thinking about walking away from it all or who has walked away from it all? Like, how would you encourage them?
Yeah, I think the main encouragement is get to know God, not tradition and church culture. I think that's the thing. Sometimes people grow up and they want to be removed from the church culture, but to realize God, literally I was reading this psalm and it talks about the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. God is everything.
Everything.
How can I minimize him to say that he is the person or people who have hurt me or this structure which I'm detaching from? God is much bigger than that, but he will always use his church as well. But to realize, who am I to say, oh, these people hurt me, and then not look at myself and say, oh, I've hurt people as well too. So
you know what I just saw when you said that? I saw us in the sense of I'm imperfect. I have flaws. I make mistakes, but yet God chooses to use me anyway.
Yeah.
But it's like when we look at the church that's full of people just like us with flaws and mistakes and issues, we feel like it's easy to dismiss that, or it's easy to reject that, or we put this impossible expectation on it that says like, yo, you're supposed to live like this. You should never do this. You should never hurt me, or I should never be wounded in this environment. But it's like, but if God is using you, why can't he use the church?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's the big thing too, is like, there's that message. Then there's the, hey, let's sit down, unpack your pain, tell you your pain is valid. I agree, it is valid. Whatever you could be feeling or have went through is more significant than you just going to a building on Sunday. Yeah. I would encourage you to say your eternity is at stake with where you land on who God is. And that's much bigger than what church you belong to, or even going back to your childhood church. We could care less about that. So I think sometimes people get hung up on church and building and dressing this way and tradition, where God wants you to be just, hey, I'm trying to relate to you. The one who created you and created the entire world wants to relate to you. Now, how do you respond to that? So I say for those who are struggling with church, start with God, start with Jesus. The church will follow. Yeah. But not to get hung up on, okay, I didn't go to church. It's like, no. At the end of the day, again, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. You therefore fit into, again, when we started out just talking about, you wake up sometimes like, man, what is life? What am I put my feet on the ground? What am I doing? Either all of this is circumstantial and it's just by chance and we just ended up here, or there is an author who is over all of this and he's very interested in what you choose to do with this time that you're allotted. So my encouragement is, as we take a step back, not just to zoom in on the church, but to think about life holistically and this very big God that wants to relate to you. Now, where does that leave you? Yeah. Where does it leave you to begin a journey to? And this is not, some people have spent years being dragged to church by their parents. You're not going to unpack that in a matter of months and just figure it out. You might go on this journey for years, but go on the journey. Yeah. My issue is when people stop and they just say, oh, I'm done with it.
I think it's the fear, bro. Like, my wife and I talk about this all the time. Like, one of our little phrases we use is, don't be a sucker. You know, it's just like, because life is scary,
Yeah.
you know, and sometimes you don't want to get in that ring. You know, I do jujitsu.
You can't
Shout
stop
out to
talking about that.
all of my jujitsu.
These jujitsu
gang,
people
gang.
on drugs,
But,
man. That wild, bro.
But, you know, it takes courage to get on the mats. You know, you can be somebody on the sideline, do this, do that, no, da. Man, get on the mat. Yeah. Get on the mat and you'll see, like, oh, it's not as easy as you think. And it requires courage to get out there. And I think, like, that's, it circles back around to faith. Like, it requires courage to live, number one, to live with those questions. Like, I think it's easy to distract yourself and bury yourself in Netflix and entertainment or whatever it is, but to really sit with these questions, to really sit in this tension, to be able to follow a God you cannot see, touch, feel, taste, smell. Yeah. Like, that requires courage. That requires faith. And I feel like I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's what's missing for a lot of folks that I think grow up in church, is it became more about the institution, the culture, the tradition, and less about the creator, Jesus. Yeah. It became less about him. Yeah. And I think that, I couldn't agree with you more about that. But I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk to you a little bit about music. By the way, this dude was one of the first this dude was the first guy I ever rapped with on a track and recorded. Man, like, when did music become such a passion for you? And for y'all who don't know, man, I'm not gonna do this. You tell the people who you are. Flex real once. Oh my gosh, I gave him the layup.
I'm a humble servant in the army of the Lord.
Come on, man. Hey, listen, this is Shay _SHE _Uno. Come on, man. Yo, like, you a real MC.
I mean, you know, I'm only who the Lord has made me.
But when did, I'm gonna stop it, man. This guy, man, go somewhere.
Well, no, I feel like, and yeah, I was unpacking this the other night, and I said, oh, dang, okay. But I think around the same time, I talked to you about summer camp and aunts and uncles and all that.
So when would that have been? Like
five,
6?
7?
Yeah.
My brothers, again, they are 4 and 5 years older than me. But everything I thought was cool came from them. Right. So their affinity for rap and the rap culture is what drew me in initially. So I would say at
Bone Thugs and Harmony.
At 5 years old, we went on vacation. I went to Sam Goody, the tape store, and I walked out with Bone Thugs and Harmony.
How your parents, first of all?
They Nigerian. They don't know what's going on
boy,
in that music.
They really fumbled that one.
My dad, I remember he trying to listen to this. He said, what?
Yeah.
So it was Bone Thugs and Harmony and then Skilo, I Wish. So those were the 2 tapes I bought. So I remember, even nowadays, my dad still calls me Skilo because I would just listen to that tape over and over and over in my Walkman. But what I also began to see at some point in there with Tupac, all these other people, started with Bone, but then watching music videos, looking at magazines, hearing about what all my friends are talking about. I think the musician, in particular the rapper in our Black community, they have a pulse on the culture, and they can inform it, what people think is cool, what people want to dress like, what people think about women, what type of women are attractive or not attractive, how you should, navigate growing up in certain neighborhoods, how you should do this or that. The rapper is even more so than the politician, or even in some aspects
runs and go grab the rapper.
Yeah, and when you look at what a communicator or a pastor is far more than a communicator. Don't get me started on that. But the pastor in the communication front, the rapper is doing the same thing. They captivate an audience. As a master of ceremonies, they're leading them, and we might not realize that they are giving us a worldview. It's our choice on what we do with that. But yeah, at 5 or 6, looking at music videos, buying tapes, stealing my brother's tapes and CDs later, listening to 93.9 and recording stuff off of the radio, like that to me became a world that has not let go of me since 5 or 6 as well.
So what do you think captivated you about music?
It was, I mean, well, nowadays they would say the vibe, right? But
Was
it's
it the
not
devil?
just the
It wasn't
vibe
the
of the
devil, was
music. Listen to maybe that Bone Thug, the
Hey,
Ouija,
Bo, oh my
the Ouija board.
Find
boy,
out
but
right now in the mighty name of Jesus Christ.
No, I think it really was. It's and people use that word culture so flippantly, but I mean, to me, culture is just it's the whole all-encompassing worldview of it, where it is the style of dress, it's the way you talk, it's the way we convey what is cool or not cool. But again, all of that was being pushed back on at the same time with the gospel. So it's like rap didn't just take over. It was the gospel pushing against it at the same time. So I always had that barrier, but always, just how.
Which is interesting to me. I'm sorry to cut you off because, bro, like, when I first met you in high school, I think it was, I met you years before. I was like, we were young, but when we first really clicked, it was like my senior year in high school. And dude, you were really like listening to Christian music, and you just had a solid balance about you that you can exist in this world with the culture, with the rap, with everything was going on, but you were also really passionate about the gospel and even communicating the gospel through rap.
Yeah.
Talk to me about like, how in the world did that happen? Like, how do you do that?
And I feel like that's where, again, when we're talking about who God is, man, he's a master craftsman. Mm-hmm. He'll use you by putting parts together that he intends, and you don't even realize that they're all coming together. So my affinity for rap culture, which also led me to, we didn't grow up in no hood, but I wanted
far from it, bro.
I wanted to be able to communicate to people who did grow up in that context, or people who were just black people in the broad spectrum of that. And rap
it
was
can't be white people. It can't be white people.
I mean, white people too. But
we're
talking about we're talking about the entire spectrum, the rainbow of humanity. But what I was just that mindset of saying, man, hip hop had this voice, and I wanted to be able to participate in what that voice could do. And at some point as well, I realized, man, the overarching voice, which is greater than hip hop or rap music or any of that, is God himself.
Hey.
So now how do these two things work together? There was many cycles and waves of what that looked like, but I could never let go of God in my pursuit of culture.
My God. EJ, our mutual friend, man, Mr. Eric Humphrey, man, we love this guy. But he always reminds me of this, and I think there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. He's like, yo, there's a grace on your life. Because sometimes I'll wonder, like, how come people just don't, like, how come you don't get it? Or why are you doing, like, things that come so natural to me, I'm just really confounded at the fact that, like, how come you don't understand this or get this too?
Yeah.
But I feel like, and he'll remind me, like, bro, it's just it's a grace on your life. And I feel like for you too, like, that preservation, like how you can be in this culture and be preserved.
Yeah.
How you can be around the culture in terms of rap music and even engage in that culture, but still have this preservation about yourself, like this purity about yourself. I think that's powerful, bro.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I want y'all to sample my boy's music real quick. I'm gonna cue up the couch sessions. Yeah, I want to cue this up. Take a quick look at this, man. Drop some comments below if you really enjoyed it. This is my boy Sheun_Uno couch sessions. Check this out.
Progress long while the clock moving fast forward. Regrets knowing I ain't get what I asked for. Was too scared to ask. Many people in my spot and I barely flashed a glimpse of potential. Give an inch, they take the length. 4 football fields and that's exactly how I feel. Distant from everybody. Field goals are no good, throw both hands up in the air. All them words I should have said that didn't come out my mouth. All these voices in my head that be pronounced in doubt. Every scripture that I read about how you love me now. All these thoughts that circle round sitting on this couch. All them words I should have said that didn't come out my mouth. All these voices in my head that be pronounced in doubt. Every scripture that I read about how you love me now. All these thoughts that circle round sitting on this couch. Heard everybody needs some therapy. Carefully wonder who gon' care for me. Heard everybody needs some therapy. Nothing but pillows on this couch to keep me company. Heard everybody needs some therapy. Carefully wonder who gon' care for me. Heard everybody needs some therapy. Nothing but pillows on this couch to keep me company. Yeah.
That was cute.
You like how I did that? So when you are reminded of those lyrics in that song, I heard everybody needs some therapy. Carefully wondering who gonna care for me.
Yeah.
What made you write that song? Like, where were you to say something? Because the reason why I'm asking you, bro, because I feel that. You know, sometimes I think you just feel like, man, who gonna care for me? Like, who is really looking out for me? You better not say, ain't nobody looking out for you, because I'll be looking out for you. I'll be texting you, checking up on you. But I'm just saying, like, where were you when you wrote, like, what were you feeling? What made you write that song?
No, I think you know, we'll talk about it too, but I don't like the trendy therapy world, self-help, get yours, blah, 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 all of that. But there is something to therapy from the time I went first to realize it's not somebody trying to fix you. It's you actually dedicating time and space to talk through things that you didn't even know were inside of you yourself.
But what put you in a place to even, because truth be known, like, I didn't even do therapy until you started doing it.
Yeah.
And you were talking to me about it. But what drives you to the place where you decide, like, hey, I either need this or I'm interested in this and I want to pursue this?
And I feel like, so the first time I went to therapy, I think I was overwhelmingly focused on how little control I have of my future. I wanted to figure out.
When you first went to therapy, it was that thought of, like, I'm not in control that drove you to therapy?
Because I wanted control. I wanted to be married by the time I'm 25. I wanted to have my music do a certain thing. I wanted to, figure out this type of career, do this, that, the other, and an obsession with things not going according to what I had planned in my head. It literally becomes that, an obsession where you're just like every day, oh, how can I, and that leads you down this spiral of, am I where I'm supposed to be? Am I who I'm supposed to be? Is there something different I'm supposed to be doing? Did I miss something somewhere? And I don't think at that time I realized, but now I do too. It starts to chip away at self-worth, because we think we can attach self-worth to accomplishments and achievements and figuring out our goals, when the only stable place to put your self-worth is the fact that this God made you. You didn't make yourself, right? So for me, I was lacking tools of how to understand myself. And I think therapy wasn't the all in all of the solution.
For sure.
It was just a brick
Gave you some
in building
instruments,
that. It was a brick. And I think that was the first intro to that, was like, oh, dang, when you take a second to think about these things, you are running into or circling the same things over and over. What does it look like to begin to move out of that?
Yeah. Would you say you were depressed?
I don't believe in depression.
You would say that. I only say that because I remember, man. I remember vividly. I was at the pool with my wife and the kids were playing and I was just venting to her.
Yeah.
And I almost, like, it was like one of those outer body experiences. Like, I heard myself, I was listening to myself vent and I was like, are you okay? You know what I'm saying? And I think I realized, like, man, I don't know if I'm okay. You know?
I don't think anybody is okay.
That's crazy.
That's the problem that I think, and even think about.
Are you okay with that?
I think we have to be okay with that. Because
why is that?
The human condition is to realize there is an element of, no pun intended, of brokenness involved because of this fallen state we're in, where when we come to meet God, we think we can just throw a blanket over it. And that means, oh, I'm whole, I'm well, I'm not. And you are spiritually. Your body and soul is still catching up with what God can do and has done in an instant, right?
Man, that's powerful.
For me as well, I think this is back to the churchiness. The church context, or being a church kid, often causes you to suppress even more any angst, any tension you feel with being are they feeling anything other than blessed and high? I'm blessed and highly favored. And yes, you are, but no, I'm struggling right now.
So you feel like that?
I'm disappointed.
That actually breaks the psyche. Like it damages us.
It leaves you with dissonance. We talk about right, where it's like you're
Dissonance,
telling me I'm
John
blessed. You're telling me I'm blessed and highly favored and happy always, but I don't feel that. So yeah, I might have a depressive part of my personality in general, but I don't know if I'm like, I could just stare at a wall sometimes. You feel me? But I think it's like we grow to be okay with not being okay always.
And you know what's interesting, bro, is when you read the Psalms, David is one of the most interesting humans. Like I always say, if there was anyone outside of Jesus Christ that I would want to sit down and talk to, it would be David, King David. But when you read his Psalms, he's such a man of faith, but he is telling it all. Like he's telling his fears, his worries, his sadness, you know, but then there's this resolve in the end. But I'll hope in you, Lord. I'll trust in you. And I feel like, what happened? Like, how do we go from the Psalms to suppressing our feelings and feeling like if I'm sad or if things aren't working right or if I just feel bummed out or if I have questions for God, that somehow, oh, no, that needs to be suppressed. That's demonic or that's out of God's will. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like that's our boy EJ we were talking about. We used to joke about this too. This is the problem with most Christian movies is they think you need to end it in a way where everything works out right. Or I need to summarize this whole story. And that's not life for real. We will have summary and fullness and summation when we get to heaven. But until we get there, some stories might be relatively open-ended in terms of you don't know why it went like that right now, you know? And I think the need, again, to please people, the need for church to leave people feeling high and all excited and shouting, it causes us to detach from the reality of when you leave this church after Sunday service, your situation might not get better, it might get worse, but God's still good. Now, how do you deal with that tension? And if you don't give people roots to deal with it, their whole world will fall apart. And I think therapy, some of these other things are means by which God can use tools to help you to put your world back together. But that's when you realize, oh, my world is founded and rooted in him, not me getting what I thought I should when I thought I should. You know what I'm saying? And I think that tension will drive anybody to somebody's couch. You better go talk to somebody.
I'm gonna sound like EJ right here. He's a mature Christian. You a mature Christian, boy. You mentioned something about what one of the things that led you to therapy was you thought you'd be married by 25. And I'm gonna put your business out there a little bit, but it's like, yo, you were a virgin until marriage.
Yeah.
And you got married, what, 33?
Yeah.
33 years old, you get married. But I watched you in the 20 plus years I've known you walk out this journey of being single, like in an incredible fashion, bro. And I tell people when I talk about you sometimes, I'm like, bro, it's not that he couldn't pull no baddies. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing if you're a virgin because, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Stop.
It's one thing, right? If you challenged in some ways.
Oh, Lord.
But brother, like you were not challenged in that department. Like you had some fine ones. Talk to me about, here again, channeling my brother EJ. I know it's a grace. It's a grace on your life. But talk to me about the preservation of your soul while being single, and at the same time, the hurdles and the challenges of being a Christian, God-devoted man, God-fearing man.
Yeah.
In romantic relationships.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know where that came from too, but I must have a little lover boy in me. It's from like, that sounds crazy, but from the certified lover boy is that's like you watch Saved by the Bell and stuff growing up as a kid, like, oh, look at Zach.
Yeah.
Look at Family Matters. It's like chasing after Lisa, the Dictionary, and all these things. It's like, oh, this again begins to program me. It's like, all right, yeah, you gotta get a girl, and it's like, okay, cool. But I think for me as well, it was just this. It's all grace, and I think at a high level, what we do a disservice in is if we push virginity. Like, that's not the goal. The goal is God himself, fear of God himself, chasing after him, and everything, other things follow. But I'll tell you this, it wasn't just by my willpower or my choice or anything. There were seasons, I remember I thought I was doing my thing when I went to campus. Look at me, I'm out here. I remember there was one girl, she said literally, oh, I just can't touch you. I said, okay, cool. And I was like,
annoying,
and she literally felt like, I remember she was just talking to one of her friends or something. It was like, oh, I feel like I just can't touch him like that. It's like, oh, he's just, whatever.
Or it's like, you're so pure, I don't want to defile you.
But who walks around with that?
I know.
Like saying, yeah, that's me, I want that. It was like, no, I don't know what would give that off, but it's other than the grace of God.
Like, you don't curse, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you ain't out here womanizing.
But again, that don't mean nothing.
I think it does, brother.
But these are external facing things too.
I'm just saying, in light of what we've been talking about in terms of culture, in terms of how we know this world gets down, bro, you're peculiar.
And I think I came to grips with that. And I was like, cool, it is what it is, And I think my biggest takeaway, though, is, of course, God being all in all. He wanted to be very involved in my dating or romantic life. And I think that was the main area where he began to show me I didn't trust him.
Ooh, talk about that.
And when we talked about what led me to therapy, it was much of that as well. Wanting to be married, wanting to figure out these relationships, all that stuff. And I feel like God was just saying, oh, you don't trust me. And it's people like you who are like, God, show me my wife.
Hey, stop it, dog.
And it's like, and I feel like what God was showing me was, I'm not going to show you nothing, just trust me. And that then, what ensued after that was a journey, which I'm probably still on in many ways, of just learning to say, God, I don't know, but you're good and I trust you with it. And when it came to dating and relationships, it was very much that too, where it was like, oh, you see a relationship you think should work, and I hold on to it with all my might. And God's like, well, what if you were to open your hand? Do you not think I'm good enough that whatever you let go of, that I have a perfect plan for you and something I'll put back in there? And I think for me, like that whole journey, it consisted of just trusting God. And then when it comes to purity and walking out all these things, I was just like, no, man, I love God. And it was his grace that went before me.
Had to be, brother.
More than anything. Yeah, it's not willpower. It's not my own strength. And I think that's so much so where we talked about being saved by grace. It's like, how can anyone boast when you realize, man, what did I do? I ain't do nothing.
Yeah. But I watched you walk out those relationships with grace.
Yeah.
I don't think you left those women, and it wasn't like it was a ton of them, right? You know what I mean? It was a lot. Let me stop. But it wasn't, put it this way. I don't think not one of those women can say, he destroyed my life, or he ruined my life, or he left me off worst, or whatever. No, bro. Like I think, and I know I'm biased a little bit, but I feel like, bro, I think you left those women better off than what you found them. And I think that if we are going to be God-fearing men and value women as we should, the way he desires for us to value them, that should kind of be the goal.
Yeah.
Like, even if things don't work out, like, I was a blessing to you. I may have nudged you closer to God than you were before. Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's true,
I think it's true, dog.
I do think, though, there is the realization of a man who's pursuing after God would want to say, okay, now that then whittles down the funnel of women I could actually pursue after to begin with.
Definitely does.
If I'm pursuing God, then I should be looking for a woman who's doing the same thing. And then if she's doing the same thing, then it comes into play to say,
have you always done that?
I think I learned a harsh lesson freshman year of college. I feel like the relationships will get to a point where it's just like, I remember a girl I was talking to, and then she was living at a house with this woman, and the woman was, she had went upstairs or something, and I was just talking to the woman. She was an older woman. She was like, you just gotta let up on the God thing some, and she'll be okay. Like, you don't have to be so hard on the God thing. Like, it's okay. And I was just like, oh. Every relationship, if I try to make it fit where you're walking with someone maybe and they're walking their own journey, it's going to reach a point where, and that again is grace, where God was just like, hey, maybe this person's not ready to walk in that way. But why do you think that you should just fight and stick around and do that? But yeah, I think it is a God thing where it was just like, this is not going to work, bro. Yeah. I remember I was telling some of our folks at church too, at some point I was, getting in like, all right, God, I got to figure something out. I was trying to talk to some girl. She's like, yeah, let's go out to get drinks and did it. And I was just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
It was like, you just literally start to feel like that fish out of water, and you can either force yourself to feel comfortable. But again, this is where it's thanks be to God for his grace, where it's like, come on. At some point, I'm like, what the heck am I doing? And it's not even just what the heck am I doing. People will just be like, I ain't even gonna text them no more. Or you would try as hard as you can and something wouldn't work. That's God navigating and moving. But I do think the underlying theme is, if I begin to view, and it sounds crazy, but people you're dating as like, oh no, this is God's daughter as well. The fear of the Lord will cause me to navigate in a certain way. Should I hide things from her and have 15 other girls I'm talking to and not inform God's daughter? I think God will make it clear to you that he cares for them equally to what he cares for you. And you better be careful how you navigate in these instances.
Hold on now. Now, I want you to, for a quick second, because my boy got 33 years of experience in the clip, right? 33 years of being single. I want you to take a moment, and specifically, like a lot of men watch my channel, majority men watch my channel. I want you to take a moment to just speak to the single fellas out there, Christian, non-Christian, it doesn't matter. Just your perspective as to, this is how a man should approach, because I think what you just said was profound, and I don't want to skip past it, but this is how a man, in light of God, should approach, value, and take care of a woman.
Yeah. I feel like the manly part of it is that all relationships come with risk. And it is back to the, I won't use jujitsu, I'll use boxing.
Come back to jujitsu, brother. It's nice over here.
If you're going to get into the ring, you have to realize it takes courage to step out. And I'm not saying I did this perfect at all, by no means, but I was learning it's okay to be clear on, this is what I want in terms of a relationship that leads to marriage, and to be clear in communicating that. And if someone doesn't reciprocate, then there is still someone that God has for you. So to be able to take what may be viewed as an L, but it's not an L in the grand scheme of it, but to not harbor these things, or to be so kind of pit-patty where we don't come out plainly and say what we want.
But do you see how saved you are? This is how saved you are. You assume that the Christian brothers even want to get married in the first place.
I mean, okay, that's a particular type of guy.
I mean, you saved, brother. What you mean? We know a lot of them like that.
That's a particular guy I'm talking to. But I think the other part is we realize, there is no fulfillment in this. When we look at Ecclesiastes, Solomon as the example, different people, there is no fulfillment in this unending pursuit of a better woman, a finer woman, the dime piece. I got to get there's someone better. To me, it's a boyish tendency to discard one toy and say, okay, I want the new shiny toy. I'm done playing with this one. The man makes the decision to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't know the future. I can't predict things. I've prayed about this, and I move out to say, God, this is the direction I'm going in, and now I'm committed to it.
And leaning into the risk. Because you started out by saying there's
risk.
It is
a risk. You cannot commit without risk, but you cannot commit and be immature.
Yeah, wow.
immaturity will cause you to waver. And that's a byproduct of it. So I think the one calling card is to say God will mature men, but that maturing comes with the confrontation of risk, the embrace of risk, and to know that God himself is the one who allows us to have courage when we walk with him. But it's not going to feel, there's no magical feeling where you flip a switch and now I'm ready to get married. Oh, I got it out my system.
Yeah. You were laughing at me when I was getting married. If y'all don't know, Sheun was my best man.
What am I doing?
Bro, I went from like, oh man, I'm getting married. This is awesome. This is great. And then I'd be like, hey, yo, what the heck? Yeah. Yo, wait a minute. Am I ready? Do I want to run? I feel like running. Yeah. Is this bad? I want to run? It was just so many different emotions. But I think, bro, you summed it up beautifully, man. I think that everything that we do in life has to start with God.
Yeah.
And when it starts with God and we understand that God created these beautiful women to be cherished, to be loved, to be nurtured, like I can't just see them as a toy. I can't just see them as something that I use, and when I'm done using them, I move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Like you will answer to God for that. And I feel like, bro, just to give you your flowers, man, I feel like you modeled that out beautifully, bro. Like just how you nurtured these women, how you, like you said, there were opportunities you had to change who you were to fit in or to do whatever. You didn't do it. I mean, it's just, brother, you don't appreciate that. I do, because how I came up and where I came from. But it's just like, bro, I just want to give you your flowers, man. I feel like the character you displayed in that season of singleness is what sets you up for this beautiful bride you have now. My goodness, y'all beautiful together, bro. Seriously, man. Talk to me about, you don't have to go through the whole story of how y'all met and everything, but just talk to me about after walking with God those 33 years, like being really discouraged about relationships, going to therapy, seeking counsel. Now the Lord like lays this gift up. And I remember you talking to me about her because you were in a little situation where it was like 3.
Chill.
I know, I'm like, it's really not as bad as it sounds, but it's like, you were like, yo, I got these 3 girls I'm talking to, I'm just talking to them, but this one, and man, like, what was that like all of a sudden to work so hard all those years, and now God just like.
Yeah, I feel like, that's one of those moments too where it's like, okay, what is life? Like, you desire something for so long that when you begin to walk into it, it don't feel real. It's like, oh, okay. But I remember initially meeting Ayanna, that was where I was like, I'm just chilling. I ain't trying.
Which is crazy. You were in hot pursuit.
Exactly.
Now the one that God has brought
it's
to
like,
you.
how weird is that where God will work when, you think you want something, you think you're so ready, but at the moment where you're like, all right, well, I'm just chilling. That's where God
He's like, all right,
presented.
ready.
Yeah, and I feel like I just remember praying and I was like, God, can I do this? Is this allowed? And it wasn't like God was like, yes, my son, this is your wife. I just felt peace to be like, all right, cool, let's go get something to eat. And getting something to eat just kept compounding. And I would say what navigated the beginning of my relationship with Ayanna was just peace. And I had not felt peace in a romantic setting for a very long time. And it was just peace in terms of we were just building, you know what I'm saying? And I think for me, that is a telltale sign of God's presence is where peace leads. And feeling that peace was just like, all right, bet. And it was just literally one step after the other.
She had her own relationship with God. She's a solid individual. And I think too, like, you guys just complement each other so well. But you just said something that just made me think. It's so funny how we want something so bad, but the moment we just kind of surrender and we rest, that's when God goes to work.
It's crazy. I mean, and I think for me, surrendering and resting looked different. I just remember the 2 things I said I'm gonna do were just go all in with youth ministry, which we had been doing forever. So I said, I love working with young people, doing ministry. I'm gonna do that. And then music. I'm gonna start performing places and doing and just do music. So when I started performing places, I actually met her somewhere I was performing, but it was just like the things that from childhood I was actually wired with, when I started to lean more into those things, peace followed. And that's where God caught me. It wasn't a rest of like, I'm just sitting in my quiet place. Yeah. I just started busying myself with the only two things. I was like, this is what I know to do. Let me just do these. And that's how it worked for me. But I think for anybody out there, you'll find a beautiful sweet spot in just saying, okay, man, who has God wired me to be? Yeah. Let me lean more into being who God has made me to be. And whatever he's going to do with my romantic life, you know, he is a master orchestrator.
He is.
And he'll catch you right where you're at, but he'll catch you busying yourself with what he's given you to do, you know?
And what I find interesting too is listening to you, peace is like a language. You know, it's like when peace speaks, you know, peace is talking. Yeah. We can try to fool ourselves all we want and like, oh yeah, I got peace, you know, I got peace for this situation. You don't have peace, but like that wholeness, that rest, that shalom, that integrity, that like this, it is well, like that is a language of God. And it's just like, what a precious gift God gives us to confidently move forward in life. Peace. Yeah. You know what I mean? So no, I think that's no small thing to skip over. Like having peace about, like, I know there's a ton of people in relationships right now have no peace. No peace. And you know, like something's wrong. Either I need to get out of this or I need to get help. I need counsel. But I would just encourage people, just based on what you just said, man, like lean into the voice of peace. Yeah. Like God is speaking to you through the language of peace, you know. Any thoughts on that before we transition?
Yeah, and I was talking to one of our boys too about it. It's like, I love what you talked about, God speaking. God speaks, but because he's such a good father, he talks to all of his children very differently.
Absolutely.
And I think what we can grow up in church thinking is, well, God's gonna do it this way for me because he did it this way for them. Some people get married at 21. Some people get married at 45. Some people get married at 50. All to know that if God has placed a desire in your heart, he is able to fulfill it whenever. So I think for me as well, just to lean into the fact God is going to speak to you and orchestrate your story uniquely for you. And I think for me, I was trying to make it fit all these things. And at the end of the day, he was just like, you don't work like that, bro. The best way to work for me, he said, I'm not going to tell you nothing because you need to trust me. And you don't, because I want to control, you know? And he said, just chill. And that was not easy, bro. But he walked and is still walking with me where my lack of trust leads to faith. He's meeting me right there, you know?
God frustrating us is a gift. You know what I'm saying? It's like if he lets us get the quote unquote victory, man, the damage that would do to us. Yeah. You know, the pride that would ensue, the lack of confidence that we would have in him. Yeah. And the more confidence we would put in ourselves. So I feel like God just frustrating us and bringing us to that place where it's like, yo, all right, I'm done. I quit. I surrender. Like, what do you want to do here? Like, I really feel like, man, it is a gift when God just doesn't let things work, you know. But when we decide to stop fighting and chasing and pursuing, I always tell my kids, they're like, but I'm trying, you know. I always say this, man, God never told us to try. He said trust. You know, it's like, yo, like stop focusing on trying so much and focus on trusting. You know, I just feel like the outcome would be better. Yeah. It's less focused on you when you trust, but it's all focused on you when you're trying. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. But what I also find dope is the fact that you got your beautiful wife and your soon-to-be father, dog. Like, talk to me about that. As a God-fearing man, you know, and you got your bride, now you're ushering in, being used by God to usher in life into this world and legacy. Yeah. Like, what is that doing to you right now?
Bruh, this is one I don't got words for yet, I don't think, because it's like, I don't think I went that far. In my head, I was like, oh, I want to get married.
Oh,
for sure.
You like, this thing crept up on me too fast.
But then even when we got pregnant, it was like, cool. And then I see her stomach growing. I'm like, she pregnant, bruh. But I haven't got past she pregnant. So now,
stuck like, oh my
so hold on a second. But I think God is communicating through it all. But I just remember the first sonogram. It had to be like 6 weeks or so. And you sit in that room and, there are those sonograms where they're just looking for the heartbeat. It's like, but to hear that heartbeat,
Your child.
and to see there's a baby in the little sack junk, I said, oh, there was no life, and now there is life, and I think it, which I'm sure we might touch on too, but to see both spectrums of, my mom passed away, so to see life ending, and then to see life beginning, to me just reminded me of like, there's nothing we can do to make life last longer or to begin and create life. But God was just showing me kind of full circle both of these things at one time. And I think I will be unpacking that for some years to come, But like now thinking about and then realizing it's a son, like a little dude who's gonna walk like me, talk like me is just, it's exciting. And I don't think I've come to many more words than that. It's exciting, and I feel the weight of just like, oh snap, bro. Because when he gets here, there's like, ain't no giving him back.
Ain't no giving him back.
Where you going? What's he about to do,
once you hold him, dog,
Oh, Lord.
your life will never be the same. I was the first person to hold Josiah when he came out the womb, and just the love, like, immediately. I'll die, give anything in the world. I only had a few seconds to hold him, but that kind of love just overshadows you, and it's like, no, this is mine.
Yeah.
This is mine,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna love him. I'm gonna protect him, nurture him, and I think that's so dope that God allows us to experience that kind of love in creation. Because that's the love he has for us. It's like we are his. We belong to him, and we're sharing this love and reciprocating this love back to him. But you mentioned this about your mom, and what I also think is dope is that before your mom passed this year, you guys were able to share with her this news.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Walk me through. I have a lot of questions just as your homie, and I'm really interested because I lost someone close to me, several people close to me, but it's just like, so I'm really interested to know your thoughts on this. But you lost your mom earlier this year. Leading up to, because it wasn't like a sudden thing, what was your prayer life like as you watch her kind of journey through what she's going through, the pain, the treatments, and all that? What was your relationship with God like during that season?
Yeah. I feel like, the right answer is, I was praying and fasting and interceding. I wasn't doing that. Yeah. My mom, again, another part of being Nigerian, and I mean her being her as well. My mom would wake up at 5 and be on the prayer call. She'd be up at midnight with the Bible open on the prayer call. My mom talked to the Lord.
Yes, she did.
I feel like when, she had a up and down battle with breast cancer. There were times, probably when she first was diagnosed, I guess my parents were like, oh, he's in school, don't tell him nothing. I'm like, and I'm the baby, so they don't nobody tell me nothing. I'm looking at them like, freak going on, bruh? So when I start realizing how serious this thing was, I'm like, she could have passed away a long time ago, but towards the end when it came back, it was just saying, hey, there's nothing medically they can do. It's beginning to spread, and it came back, and the chemo would be harsher on her than anything before. I think I began to grieve or get a feeling of like, hey, this could be it. But then I also was praying like, well, God, I know you can do anything. At some point in between there, to actually pray, God, your will be done.
Wow. What got you there?
You know what? And this is like a culmination of everything. You know how the church we grew up in too is like, by faith, the Lord will heal. You know, it's just very in that charismatic world. And I always wrestled with that because to my fault, sometimes I'm a very logical person where you say by faith, God gonna heal this person. What about that person? And so now I'm wrestling between, well, what this faith y'all talking about, is it working or
Did
is
they
it
not
not working?
have enough faith? Did I not have enough faith?
And I think God got me to a point where I realized like, he does 100% of the healing. We don't do anything. So if I am going to participate in this, it's really just me aligning with the one who has the ability and the strength. That ability and strength is not persuaded by my prayer. Is there something to praying and God heeding us and answering us? 100%. But is God going to do what he's going to do? Yes. So for me, especially, and this was, maybe a month or so before she passed, it would be like, pray for my mom. But then I'm like, well, what do I want people to pray? I mean, sure, pray for her to be healed. I'm not saying don't do that. But I just know my own prayer said, if it's God's will that she would be with him, that's far better than anything else this world could ever give her. And beginning to let go came with mourning and pain and all of that. But it also began to lean into that trust aspect of saying, well, God, you know, your wisdom is far better than mine. So I can pray her to stay here. But if you are perfect, then why is your will not the highest and best prayer that I should pray for? So it became just very simply like, and, God using this, I think a lot, bruh. So he was using that too, to just get to a place to say, I don't know what to pray other than God, your will be done. Help her to be at peace. Help her to not lose her faith. That was my other thing, that she would not see, she was rocking, but to see the pain she was in and to know the love she has for me and my brothers, I knew she's not just giving up. She ain't want to go nowhere. But my prayer was that she would, this God she's been talking to for so many years, that the fullness of joy he would show her would let her know like, oh, this is far better. It's far better. But what God, and still at times is still working on me, and it's like, I want to make sure she's okay. And so I'm like, oh Lord, where's she at? Because it used to be like, oh, she'll call, oh, make sure she's good. Let me rush her to the house. Let me do this. Let me do that. And God's just reminded me, if you think you can take care of her, how much more can I take care of her? And that is like a daily reminder now where I'm like, oh no, she's good. Just rest in the fact that she's good. But my default setting is like, hold on a second, let me go. And it's like, oh no, she's good,
So good to hear, bro, because I hear like, and I identify too with just that feeling of like, it's almost like they're not gone. You have to really like wrestle with that.
Yeah.
The reality, they're gone. They're not coming back.
Yeah.
It's like what David said, they can't come to me, but I will go to them. And, but I love the demonstration, bro, of your faith, because I've seen people just, something like this happens and they just throw the baby out with the bathwater. They're like, God, how could you? I'm mad at you. How could you? And I'm always curious as how people could be mad at God. I get it. Trust me, I get it. Like, I understand there are certain things people go through, and I understand like how you know God is all powerful and all knowing. Why didn't he stop this, or why didn't he intervene or do something? But I always marvel too at people who, despite what happens and if it doesn't go their way, how there's just this unwavering trust in God. And I feel like you demonstrated that all the way through. And it's really just a reflection of your parents' faith. I was with you the day she passed, and I remember when I walked into the house and I walked into the kitchen to get out the way. It was a lot going on. And when I walked into the kitchen, the first thing I saw was her chair and her Bible. And I was just like, man, I can remember the countless nights I would come over. She's sitting in that same seat with that Bible on the phone, on the prayer, so it's just like, no, listen, she is in the presence of fullness of joy. Like beyond anything we can even describe. One of the things that blew me away too, bro, was you actually eulogized your mom. And I eulogized my brother. And so I know what that's like. You're like, I'm grieving too. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you feel this divine call to stand firm in the faith and show everybody else, because your mom is gone, but everybody else is still here.
Yeah. And
how you're hurting, but at the same time, you have to be strong for them. Brother, what was that like?
Yeah.
Like not only just a funeral, but planning the funeral and then getting up there and eulogizing your mom.
Yeah. I feel like I showed my wife this too. I don't know the date I wrote it. It was maybe a month or so before my mom passed. Maybe it'll turn into a song. I don't know. But it was like I preached my mama's funeral. It was painful, but was beautiful. So I knew I have to preach at this funeral. But the main goal was through that pain to know like, oh, this is an opportunity for the beautiful hope we have to be shared with a group of people who are all coming together, who I may not have an opportunity to share this with at any other time. So I felt the burden to do it, but it wasn't a weighed down burden. It was like, you're supposed to do this, and I was beginning to plan that before she passed, because I just had that knowing of like, whenever it is, I'm going to do this.
Or you started letting go and you knew like, okay, she's going to go home.
I mean, I didn't know it would be that soon, but by no means. But I was like, oh, I don't know when it's going to be, but whenever it is, I knew God would have something for me to communicate. And I think what I'm still learning about grief is like, I knew I would preach that, and that was its own thing over here, because like you said, that's for the people that are still here. But how do I come to grips with her not being here? That was its own separate entity, bro, which I'm still walking through. But I knew in planning her funeral, I wanted it to be a celebration of the fact that I had 100% confidence in knowing where she is. Yeah. So that's a different type of funeral than a funeral where I'm like, oh, I don't know what's going on, bro. Where she? Let me gotta say something. But it's like, oh, I know where she is. Yeah. What is the pathway to get to where she is? Let's see if we can communicate that hope to everyone else. But it's an interesting thing, because that being able to preach a funeral lived over here, but in the midst of all of that is like, oh, snap. Which I still, like you said, Thanksgiving just passed. It was great. We had everybody at the house. My mom loves to host. So we said, we're going to host. We had everybody over there.
Always go to the Thanksgiving.
You pull up. Everybody pull up, get a plate. You make sure everybody's good. And it was good, too. I was like, oh, I'm not sad. I got home that night after and just broke down. And, Ayana was like, oh, why are you sad? And I was like, you know what the saddest part is just realizing, oh, that was the last Thanksgiving I was going to have with her the year before. I don't do well with like, oh, that's the last. That's tough, brother. Yeah. So I think that's what I'm still grappling with. Like, oh, that's the last time you see her in this setting. I still expect my phone to ring. It's like, oh, shoot.
So how has this sobriety, it's challenging, bro, because when you, especially in our shoes, like not only are we just people, but we're ministers. So we've been divinely tasked and called to stand with people in their darkest moments and to give hope. By the way, like Shayla could tell you, bro, like I cried your entire sermon. I was like, what's happening to me, bro? Like I just could not But man, I felt like, I was like, that ain't my boy Sheun, bro. It was like a whole different vibe was on you, or mantle, as they say, just fell on you, bro. And you preached the gospel with boldness, with clarity, with joy in your soul. And man, it just moved me the entire time. But now that, Mom's is home, how has this, and you're bringing a son into the world, like, how has this dynamic changed the way you think you'll live the rest of your life?
It's tough because there's like which I'm still navigating. There's this, maybe it is dark, maybe that's the word, where it's like, oh dang, I'm already thinking about, oh, my son's gonna, if the Lord should tarry, I'ma leave and he's gonna deal with what I'm dealing with of me not being here. And it's like, oh no, just enjoy the fact that little dude's coming. Don't get so wrapped up in. So I'm navigating all of that, because then I'm getting into this Ecclesiastes, like, man, what is life, bro? If I'm just gonna,
We all just gonna die.
It's like it's good and bad. It's good in terms of now it will, we talk about that scripture a lot about numbering your days and like really valuing them. That's the good side. The bad side is where I'm just like, it don't matter. And it's like, of course it matters, So the wrestle is, I'm both, joyful and sad, and they exist together. And I'm just becoming fine with that. But for my son, it's like, there's nothing but joy there. And what you talked about, which I didn't touch on a little bit too, was just when it was the week before my mom passed, I told her and my dad that we were having a kid, and I could just see her face just like, and that broke me, because it's like, all she wanted was grandkids. She was working all those years just waiting, like, y'all just have some kids so I can play with them and get to, and now it was just tough, because I realized, oh, this is such a great joy to share with her, but it will be a short-lived joy on this side that she gets to experience. But I just remember one of her good friends, even before we told them we had a baby, she said, oh, I had a dream and your mom was holding a baby. And I said, what? And then she was like, oh, then I found out you're having a baby. And I was just, to me, little things like that are just like reminders, like, oh, she's not lacking or wanting for anything. This baby will be told about the great impact and legacy that she left through me and through all my brothers and through everybody, through my dad. He will walk into that, and she's not lacking that experience. So it's just a, the beauty of the season is, in the midst of losing her, God still gave me the joy of, now I've lost something, but I'm expecting something, and they're both together. And I was like, he knew exactly what he was doing.
That's so wow. And it's so spiritual, man, because Jesus, he tells us that, if you lose your life, you'll actually discover it. You'll find it, So there's something about that. And that's a grown-up lesson to receive, and it's unfortunate that life will teach it to us in this way. But nonetheless, it's like, it is a lesson that we need to catch. It is a lesson that we need to absorb and realize that life is brief. Our lives are fragile. God holds all things together by the power of his word. Yeah. And we exist for his glory and his glory alone. So it's like, it makes you think about your 9 to 5, because I know we talk about this all the time. Man, I'm sitting in these meetings talking to these lame people, bro. I don't feel like, it's just like, but at the end of the day, one thing also too that I appreciate about you is, even though we work full-time jobs, we are full-time pastors. We are full-time ministers of the gospel. Like, we haven't sacrificed the mission for whatever it is that we think we need down here. It's like, no, we're going to go to work and do whatever we're doing. But man, we are going to keep the mission alive. We're going to push the ball forward. So, nah, brother, I just want to say, man, I can't say this enough, but I'm glad I have this on film. Your son, my kids, will be able to watch this someday and to see us men, brothers who, I ain't getting any more, shut up. But brothers who just stood by each other, dude. Stood by each other, man. Served Jesus together. It's like, it's an honor, man. Like, me, I like war. I like combat. It's like, it's an honor, man, to go fight with somebody side by side who's fighting. Yeah. There's so many cats not fighting. And I'm sorry, I don't have time for that. It's like I'm really in the fight. Yeah. And so it's like when I see other people in the fight, especially brothers that God has put you in covenant with, it's like, man, it's been, brother, hear me, it's been one of the greatest privileges of my life to know you, bro. And I say this, man, I ain't got no qualms about saying it, because the last thing Ella Jane or anybody gonna say about me is Rodney ain't say what he felt. I'm saying what I feel, brother. It's a privilege, it's an honor. But with that being said, man, is what do you have coming up? I already said that you're an MC. I know you got some music going on. Any projects, anything coming up that you want to let the people know about?
There's always something. But yeah, no, but even before that too, I would say just to reciprocate, say I love you, man. And
yeah, you need to say that.
I don't take it lightly. Family, of course, you're born into it, and then God as well brings people into your life that are family. And that's what we are, to be there. The day my mom passed away is not a light thing, So, man, I appreciate that more than words can express. And also just, we walked through life. And I think that is, all this thinking of death, the meaning of life. I think that is it there to say, we walk with the Lord and we walk with the people that the Lord brings into our life. What else is there to it than that, And it's just a beautiful reminder of that we get to walk through this life together. But and then, coming up is the baby. That's the project, what I'm saying? But working on music, my hope is to, as I get older, just to release crap. Crap is a bad word. Release things.
And you're releasing it too with a whole different, obviously everybody wants their art to be appreciated and viewed, but I feel like you're grown now. You're releasing this music because, man, this is what I want to do. Yeah. And I want to touch the people who are going to resonate with it.
Yeah. And that's my hope is just, and that's a whole other part of mourning too, is like to have dreams rooted in what may or may not be of the Lord, to say, I'm about to get signed, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do all that. And then
bro, you wasn't going to get signed, man.
Listen, I was about to be in Philadelphia.
Illuminati. I got you out of there, though, boy. Got you out of there. All that fell apart, too.
It did. But, to come to grips with whatever the Lord places in front of you, maximize that. It may not look or feel like what you thought, but it is exactly where he needs you to be. So I don't want to look back at life and be like, oh, I was scared to do this, or this. It's going to be like, oh, I tried it all. If I bumped my head off the wall, I did it. If I gave something my best effort ever, I did it. And that, to me, is what music is, to go out and say, this was the best effort I could put into this thing. And I do love that, too, to be able to now have a time capsule to pass down and be like, oh yeah, look at you. Yeah, I ain't washed up out here. Look at that.
And I'm not washed up either. You won't stop saying I'm retired.
The music ain't your thing.
He ain't let. Hey, oh my God, the hatery is real.
The music ain't your thing.
The hatery is real.
We all have our things.
Get me on the track. Watch I body you. Go for it. Get the track ready. Get the track ready and send it my way. I'm gonna body you. I ain't playing. Anyway, man, brother, I love you. Let me pray for you. Father, I thank you so much for my brother. I love him so much. I thank you that you love him, Father, far beyond what I can imagine or think. I thank you for the plans that you have for him. I thank you for him and his lovely wife, their baby boy that's on the way. God, I thank you for great favor and joy resting upon that child. I thank you that no weapon formed against them would prosper. I thank you that they would continue to grow in their fear and their knowledge and their love of who you are. And God, I thank you that you will use them mightily mightily for your kingdom. And may this baby boy be like an arrow in his quiver. Lord, that as he aims him and fires him in the direction that you desire for him to go, Father, may he hit the mark, may he hit the target and execute everything you've called him to do. In the matchless name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. 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 I appreciate you guys tuning in. This is the Beautiful Breakdown. It's your boy Rodney. Peace.